This might be controversial, but I think we need to stop accusing people of using AI. But before everyone gets their pitchforks ready, this is not a pro AI video. I've been extremely vocal about my outrage over companies conducting layoffs because of AI, and I genuinely fear for a future where we're no longer able to decipher what's real, and I have no idea what to do about that. But in the interim, I think accusing people of using AI is doing more harm than good. The rate at which I'm seeing people hurl AI accusations has become alarming, and I'm worried that this is going to stifle our creativity and make people afraid to express themselves and put their work out there. I remember when ChatGPT first gained popularity and people were saying if someone uses the M dash in their writing, that's a dead giveaway that they used AI. And at first I thought that was hilarious. In fact, I thought it was so funny that I doubled down and started using the M dash even more. Meanwhile, most of the writers I talked to started to avoid the M dash and were bitter about having to rely on the semicolon more when they needed a pause in their writing. But now I see people saying that using a semicolon is a sign that someone used AI. So if that means people are now trying to avoid using the M dash and the semicolon, we're going to run out of punctuation. I've seen people say that the rule of three is a clear sign someone used ChatGPT, mainly when listing adjectives to describe something. But the rule of three is a writing principle that's been around longer than any of us have been alive. And I don't know about anyone else, but it's been ingrained in my head that when I structure a sentence that has a list in it, that it's ideal to list no more than 3 adjectives. In my high school essays, when I'd write a sentence with a list of 4 adjectives, I'd be told to cut one of them because the sentence was too wordy. But if I only used 2 adjectives, I'd get told I could expand on it a little. So it became a habit to aim for 3. And I see so many people bringing up the "it's not blank, it's blank" sentence structure, which is something I do a lot when writing movie reviews. I find it extremely useful specifically for reviews because it allows me to address the ways a movie subverted my expectations, the criticisms that I'd normally have about this type of movie and how this particular film deviates from that, and the criticisms that I think other people might have about this film. So for example, let's say Hamnet. I'd be concerned that some people might call it emotionally manipulative. But instead of writing, "one could argue that the film is emotionally manipulative, but here's why I disagree," instead I could write, "it's not emotionally manipulative, it's a restrained and honest portrait of grief." It just feels a little more streamlined, but I've used both of those types of sentences before, and I think it's good to have some variety. I've just personally been trying to get better about varying my sentence structures, but all of these things that are ostensibly dead giveaways that someone used AI are just normal ways of writing. The other day I saw someone share notes on something that was blatantly written by a human. It was informal and personal, but because they used bullet points and had certain words in a bold font, someone said it was AI generated. That's literally how I used to structure my notes in school because it makes it easier to scan your notes. But my biggest pet peeve of all is when someone cites one of those AI detectors as proof that someone used AI. You don't even need to conduct thorough research to figure out that those things are bullshit. It's common sense. I've tested out dozens of them myself, and something I've noticed is that they're all selling something. If it's not the AI detecting software that they're selling, then they're selling some sort of humanizing software. So they want you to put your text into their AI detector, they want you to see some of the text get flagged as likely being AI, and they want you to spend money on their so-called humanizer to fix it. That right there should be all the proof you need not to trust them. But in case that's not enough for some people, I went down a rabbit hole with my own writing. For the record, none of what I'm saying is me trying to defend myself. No one to my knowledge has accused my writing of being AI generated, at least not yet. But I'm sure it'll happen eventually because the things I've seen people accuse of being AI are pretty ridiculous at this point. So far, the only AI accusations I've received were the time someone called me a bot because apparently I have no personality in my videos, and the time someone accused me of reading off a ChatGPT generated script because he said my movie recommendations were based on hyper-specific trivial details that no one cares about. Because sometimes when I give movie recommendations, I like to throw in little fun facts to draw connections between certain movies. And I remember the fun fact that specifically set that person off was that I said there's a deleted scene from Good Will Hunting where one of the characters watches Ghost in the Shell. And I'm pretty confident that if you ask ChatGPT to write you a script of movie recommendations for someone whose favorite movie is Good Will Hunting, it wouldn't come back with Ghost in the Shell and it wouldn't mention that completely useless fun fact. But anyway, even though no one accused my writing of being AI generated, one day I was reading a Letterboxd review and thought, wow, that sounds like AI. I can't believe this person would use AI to write a brief paragraph about a movie. And then I stopped and asked myself what made me think that was written by AI. And whether it was the word choice or the sentence structure, I realized, hey, I've used that word plenty of times too, and I've used that sentence structure as well. So who am I to judge this person's writing? So then I started thinking people must read what I write and think it's AI generated too. So I copied and pasted something I wrote into one of the most popular AI detectors, and it gave me a score in the 80s or 90s, which meant this software was extremely confident that the writing was AI generated. And then I copied and pasted someone else's writing into that same generator, and it said 0%. So I had a complete existential crisis and started testing out all types of writing. I've tried out a lot of AI detectors, but I'm going to focus on ZeroGPT because that's the one I see people citing the most, and it's the one that people seem to think is the most credible, and it fills me with rage. I copied and pasted some old essays I wrote back before ChatGPT even launched into that software, and pieces of those essays were still getting flagged as AI generated. Side note, I love how when I copy and paste my old essays into ZeroGPT, it always assumes the date was AI generated. As ChatGPT once said, October 21st, 2014. ChatGPT was released in 2022. The other day, I reread my review of The Neon Demon, which I wrote in 2016. It's more of an argumentative analysis than a review where I just talked about all the criticisms I heard about the movie and tried to defend it. And in it, I noticed I used one of the dead giveaways that someone used ChatGPT, the dreaded "it's not blank, it's blank" sentence structure. And of course, ZeroGPT thinks that part of my writing was likely AI generated. Again, I wrote this in 2016. Here's my Letterboxd log for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse from December 1st, 2018. This was a much more informal piece of writing, but would you look at that? Are those M dashes? I used M dashes in 2018, 4 years before ChatGPT launched. Do you know what this means? It means I invented time travel, so in 2018 I could travel to the future and ask ChatGPT to write this stupid little Letterboxd log about how much I like Spider-Man. And this is what I think about now every time someone tries to cite an AI detector as legitimate proof that someone used AI. In my Letterboxd log for adolescence, my first sentence was, "Holy fucking shit." When I copied and pasted that Letterboxd log into ZeroGPT, that first sentence was highlighted as 100% AI. So in the wise words of ChatGPT, holy fucking shit. My Letterboxd log for Wicked, that wasn't a formal piece of writing. I broke plenty of grammar rules, but the sentence, "and I thought the trailers looked terrible," was evidently generated by AI. Another example, I wrote my review for the movie Train Dreams without any internet connection. I saw it at a film festival, and I was seeing two movies at the same venue that day, but with a decent gap in between movies. And instead of being smart and going to grab food in between movies, I just stood outside the venue typing my review in my notes app. There was no Wi-Fi at the venue. My phone didn't even have service, so my text messages weren't going through. I couldn't get in touch with anyone the entire time I was there. So I couldn't use AI even if I wanted to. I couldn't even use Google to double check if I was spelling someone's name correctly. If there's a way to access the security cameras outside that venue, I could pull up footage of me standing outside, shivering, typing the review into my phone completely free of AI. But out of curiosity, when I got home, I ran what I wrote through the AI detector, and guess what? It didn't come back with a 0%. So I started trying to figure out what makes these AI detectors flag something as AI. What do I have to do to get these things to believe that I wrote something by myself? Because clearly it doesn't matter if I wrote something years before ChatGPT was even a thing, and it doesn't matter if I wrote something without the internet, everything I write keeps getting flagged. So I tested out some writing and changed certain words to see how it affected my score. I tried simplifying my word choices and just dumbing down what I wrote because I thought maybe that would make the AI detectors believe it was human writing. And sometimes the score actually went up. It was extremely inconsistent. I could change literally only one word and the score would change by over 10%. I could change one piece of punctuation and the score would change by over 10%. It got to the point where I changed so many things around and watched how the score fluctuated that I couldn't draw any meaningful conclusion as to what these AI detectors think is AI. One time I used a different AI detector and I started typing in the text box box in real time just a bunch of nonsense. I literally typed something along the lines of, I like bananas. Do you like bananas? Bananas are yellow. I don't even really like bananas that much. I'm just trying to type some basic sentences because these AI detectors all think my writing isn't human. And you're not gonna believe it. It came back as 100% AI generated. And let's be real, I didn't even need to do any of this to prove that the AI detectors are bullshit. If something was modeled after human writing, it's going to deliver pieces of writing that reflect what it learned from human beings. So how can this software accurately detect the difference? I just think people need to be more mindful about accusing people of using AI. It's funny because when you accuse someone of using AI for their writing, it's as if you're saying, this sounds too smart, I don't think you wrote it. But if you accuse a graphic designer of using AI, it's as if you're saying, this art looks so bad, I don't think a human made it. I've noticed more small artists having their designs get labeled as AI, and then when someone proves that it was created by a human being, the people who were so confident it was AI generated will just say, well, it looks really bad. It's also weird to me that people are accusing others of using ChatGPT to write about movies, because most people who write about movies aren't getting paid to do it, so they don't have to write about movies. If this is something they're doing for fun, what's the benefit of asking ChatGPT to write a movie review? And I've seen film festival reviews get accused of being entirely AI generated, which is absurd to me because when a movie is at a festival, most people haven't even seen it yet. So where is ChatGPT even getting any info to write a review? I'm not saying people don't use AI to write reviews. I've seen it with my own eyes. And the only reason why I can say that with any certainty is because there was a movie I saw at a test screening that hadn't been screened anywhere else, and I saw a full-length review on Letterboxd, and I had seen the movie, so I could tell this was written by someone who hadn't seen the movie. I also noticed that this person was publishing reviews for a bunch of movies that no one had seen yet, and they were publishing 7 or more of these reviews in a single day. So perhaps it's possible that they were writing fake reviews for movies they haven't seen yet, but to write them that quickly, I think it's safe to assume in this one particular scenario that they were generated by AI. I don't understand why anyone would do something like that. I don't know if it's for clout or to try to become Letterboxd famous, but that in and of itself is bizarre to me. Please don't try to become Letterboxd famous. You're not going to gain anything from that. The only thing in your life that'll change is that you'll probably get bombarded with a bunch of unhinged hate comments on your reviews. And if you're publishing AI generated reviews because you're trying to get more likes on Letterboxd, that doesn't even make sense because the reviews that tend to get the most likes are the joke reviews anyway. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I believe most people are not using AI to write their reviews because what's the point? I also think it's important to note the difference between using AI as a tool and having generative AI do the work for you. Most of the people who accuse others of using AI don't recognize the distinction between AI and generative AI. For the record, every time I've said AI in this video, I've been referring to generative AI. But artificial intelligence has been around for quite some time, and there were plenty of writing tools on the internet to check your grammar, punctuation, and spelling long before ChatGPT was a thing. I know plenty of people who'd use Grammarly or the Hemingway app to proofread their writing, although Grammarly eventually started using generative AI and isn't exactly the same. I've personally never been a big fan of either of those tools unless my goal is to make my writing more concise, because I feel like my style of writing does result in some wordiness and repetition, but sometimes I prefer that. I think too much brevity can sometimes make what I'm saying come across as harsh or more extreme than I intended, so sometimes I want extra words to soften what I'm trying to say. And I think that wordiness makes my writing sound more like me, even if it's not always the most efficient way to say something. I also think it's very easy for people to write in similar ways when talking about the same topic. I worry that my reviews all sound similar to each other, and I worry that my reviews sound too similar to other people's reviews. But there are only so many words and phrases that exist, and people are inevitably going to come up with similar ones. On more than one occasion, my friend and I posted reviews without seeing each other's writing first, and ended up using the exact same word or phrase. It just happens. Not to mention, when you spend a lot of time around people, you tend to adopt their mannerisms and ways of speaking, which is also why part of me worries that maybe so many people are using AI that everything I'm reading is AI generated, and that style of writing is seeping into my brain brain and it's affecting my writing. So maybe we're all starting to sound like AI even when we're not using AI. But at the same time, people who are actively avoiding certain punctuation and sentence structures to avoid being accused of using AI, I feel like that's negatively affecting their writing as well. The internet is a cruel place. Pretty much everything you put out there is going to be met with some sort of negativity. So maybe not for everyone, but for some people, it takes courage to put their work out there. And I don't want to silence those people or stifle their creativity because they're afraid of being accused of using AI. It just sucks that there are people who put time and effort into improving their writing only to have someone say their writing was generated by AI. Imagine taking a course because you want to be a better writer and putting your work out there only to be met with accusations that your work is AI generated. That's gotta crush people's motivation. Imagine someone stays up until 4 a.m. writing something they're really proud of just to have someone comment, written by ChatGPT. That person might wonder, why am I even doing this? Why did I lose sleep writing this? And they might not want to share their writing ever again. So instead of seeing more pieces of original writing from new voices, if we keep accusing everyone of using AI, we're just going to see more writing from the people who are proud of the fact that they're using AI. And if you're someone who constantly throws around those accusations, maybe think about the person on the receiving end. Think about the damage you could be causing to their reputation. Because so many people still believe those AI detectors are a legitimate source, and it makes my blood boil. I think all the sci-fi novels and movies were right. Technology is going to keep getting better, but the real threat to our humanity is ourselves. It's like that episode of The Twilight Zone, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, where the neighbors think there's an alien invasion, and it essentially turns into a witch hunt where they accuse certain neighbors of being an alien, and even claim to have proof that one of them is an alien until people end up dead. And it turns out that there was no alien invasion. The real monsters were the people, the human beings who panicked and grew suspicious and turned their backs on one another.